On behalf of the captain and the crew, we'd like to welcome you on board Flight 081, Summer Travel Plans with a Chance of Turbulence. Cabin crew, arm doors, and cross-check.
Thank you for listening to us today. If this is the first time listening to this podcast, welcome aboard. If you're a returning listener, we're glad you're back. Seat 1A provides tips and tricks from more than 5 million miles worth of flying to help you take off from the crowd.
In today's experience recorded on the 18th of June, 2024, we're going to take a look at our summer travel plans and see if there's going to be a chance of any turbulence along the way.
All right. Yeah. So welcome to all you new listeners who may have come across us listening to Paul Papadimitriou and Vinod on a episode of Layovers.
Absolutely. That was fantastic.
And welcome to our regular listeners as well.
Yeah. Big shout out to Paul. Thank you so much for having me co-host on your episode 139. That was a lot of fun. For anyone listening, Layovers is an awesome podcast. You must give it a listen and follow and see how many episodes you can track back and listen. Paul and Alex have a great thing going. If you're an av geek or just anything about travel and airports and airlines, great episode. So happy to be friends and, plotting the similar paths of all things podcast alongside. So yeah, thanks again, Paul.
Excellent. Yeah. So, we're going to take a look at we've got some travel plans this summer, both of us. And we've got, there's in the news, there had been, unfortunately, the story of, Singapore Airlines and with the turbulence over Thailand. And then other turbulent issues over the last month, 2 months or so. And of course, being summer in the northern hemisphere, chances of thunderstorms or that kind of heavy weather or hurricanes or that kind of thing. So, turbulence is at the front of people's minds, especially as a lot of travelers are going this summer.
It's funny. Yeah, turbulence is now at the forefront of all things news because of that unfortunate incident that happened with the Singapore Airlines flight. It's funny though. Turbulence is always there and always has been there and always will be there. But I think nowadays with, the way news just goes in an instant, whether it be on official channels or unofficially on social media or just being spread around, everyone kind of pays attention a bit more. I remember when I was cabin crew, you'd have nervous flyers and people would ask me as crew, like, well, is there going to be turbulence? Are we going to die? Are we going to crash? All this kind of stuff. Like, let me put it to you this way. The people flying the plane have families they need to get home to tonight. So they're going to do everything in their power to keep this plane straight and level because that's what they are paid to do. And they're paid a lot of money to do it properly. So don't worry. We're going to get you home safe. And that kind of just sort of would smooth it out. But yes, the unexpected occurs. And, maybe we can sort of weave this in as we sort of talk about, our plans and where we're going, but chronologically, I guess we all just could do a quick, fast little trip report of an airline that I flew recently, which there was some turbulence.
Yeah, you flew one of Canada's ultra low cost carrier Flair from Vancouver to Calgary, up and over the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, just a quick day trip. Canada's a strange place. I think because it's such a large country, we've seen, I won't say ultra just yet. We've seen low cost carriers come and go over the decades. The classic route, Vancouver to Toronto, across the country, back and forth, Vancouver, Calgary, like these sort of transcontinental runs. And even WestJet started off on that shtick, like that friendly low cost carrier. And now obviously they're not. They're like proper mainline, one of the national carriers of Canada. But Flair has really held to the ultra component of it. Like they are unbelievably low cost.
So, ancillary wherever they can, right?
Yeah. Like I will not fly them again unless absolutely, absolutely necessary, because I did not necessarily enjoy the experience. Now, the ticket, the price, I paid 107 Canadian dollars return tax in for their lowest, smallest fare, which allows you to bring a personal item. Because that's all I was
Like a
doing. I was
laptop
just,
bag, yeah.
yeah, that's pretty much it. Well, even that, the definition of that gets a bit skewed. And we'll get to that in a second. So, yeah, it was cheap. And this is, we're talking an hour flight each direction. You're covering a few thousand kilometers. So that puts it into perspective.
And I mean, there was a professor at McGill University for aviation. He sort of said that if you're looking for ticket prices in Canada, check Flair because nobody is going below their cheapest. That's sort of the floor where you're looking to figure out what's the
It's a
cheapest
great,
ticket I
yeah,
could get. I mean, that'll be your floor price, and
absolutely.
then go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. The main carrier, Air Canada, WestJet, they were triple, quadruple the price of this run. So fine. I paid for a seat, an aisle seat, because I wanted to, and it cost a whole, like, I don't know, $7. That's 100, and then the 707 makes it to that. So that was done. And did I pay for it on the return? I think I did as well. So fine. Online check-in, classic ULCC, you need to do your online checking, obtain your digital boarding pass because they'll charge you $25 if you have to do it at the airport. Fine. I followed all the rules, 24 hours, hit it, checked in, and then it said you need to go to the airport to get your boarding pass. You are checked in, but you need to go and get your bag verified. So it was a bit counterintuitive. I was like, well, okay, fine. So I rock up at the airport and I'm thinking, is there going to be like an express line just simply for bag check where you kind of flash the boarding pass? No, they make you
They
line
had
up.
a
Doesn't
measure.
matter. Well, it doesn't matter whether you checked in, whether you hadn't, whether you had big bags, small, you're all in one line. So that was a bit disgruntling. And yes, they had full sizing. Like there was no way you're getting around it. There was no way to sneak around it. It was planted in that middle of that queue. There was the agent with the two sizing bits.
Sizers on the scale.
No scale actually. They didn't scale it, and they had different tags affixed once they were verified. And yeah, it didn't matter whether you're carrying a tiny little purse or the questionable, maybe too big. Every single bag going on that plane had been through that sizer, every carry-on bag. And if it was too big, then you're going to have to pay. Mine was fine. I knew what I was doing. It's like, okay, now what? Okay, you have to go to the counter and get the boarding pass. I'm like, are you kidding me? Get there, got it, and then the seat was wrong. So the night before, I think I was in 21D, and then I had found like I needed to kind of crunch my time a bit because okay, timing on the other end on arrival. I'm like, okay, I'm going to move up for a whole $3 more. I was able to move up to 7A window. Okay, fine. So when the boarding pass printed, it was my original seat 21D. Okay, sorry, no, I paid here. I'm scrambling on my phone to try and find that silly little receipt they send. And then here's where it gets funny. She's like, okay, phone number on file is X. Yes. Okay, we've just sent you a text message with your new boarding pass. Okay. And I look and it's 5A. I'm like, oh, well, that's actually better. But what? So you made me line up to come here to verify the bag. Fine. You print me a boarding pass that's wrong, but then you text me a new boarding pass with a different seal. It's just whatever. Fine, continue along. And then that was kind of that portion of the flight. Now, YVR Airport is also going through something kind of bizarre. They have, on the domestic side, they have two major checkpoints typically. There's the A, B, and then there's the C. And they basically service the two major architectural arms of the domestic terminal. They're in a process of mass renovation for the B section. So that means everyone is polarizing to the A or the AB security checkpoint, which puts a heck of a load on just one checkpoint. I have Nexus, which gives me fast track. Okay, so I show up. Now my gate is a B gate, so I am in that section. And the agent says, oh, you can go through here, but if you like, you can go to, and they call it checkpoint 3, some new random checkpoint I've never heard of. And
Up the stairs?
it's up the stairs, yeah. But I didn't know this at the time. I'm like, okay, what's the difference? She's like, you don't have to deal with liquids and the belt and all this. I'm like, okay. I quickly said yes, not thinking. I was like, I don't even have liquids. I have like nothing. I'm bare bones. But okay, whatever. I want to go see it anyway. So this takes you all the way back to the middle of the terminal. You have to go up to an upper level, which is almost exiting, and you go to this new section. This new section where there's never been a security checkpoint before. Fine. Get there. And basically they'd sent all of us fast track people up there. Well, the fast track line was long.
A regular line.
I was like, well, I should have just, the amount of time I've spent walking to get up here, now I'm going into the sign. So I asked the agent, because I looked around the side and they have regular security as well, dead empty. The agents are there like spinning their, metal detector wands in their hands. So I said, can I go there? She's like, sure, but you have to pull your liquids out. I'm like, I don't have liquids. She's like, okay, go. And I was in and through in a heartbeat. And then back down the escalator, it spit me out at the C side, and then I had to walk all the way back. So,
oh man,
it was a bit of a hoop-de-hoop, loop-de-loop. I mean, just because simply I was interested, but quite a time waster at the end of it. So, yeah, get to the gate, and it's so strange. You typically think, okay, 30 minutes out, they're going to start calling for boarding. I went 40 minutes out, and they're ready boarding. Slowly boarding, like just trickle boarding. It was very odd. Get on this plane. It is like riding a Greyhound bus. Like literally the seats are gray. Yeah. It's just full economy. There's no adornments. Okay. And my expectations were not high. It's a brand new plane. It was a Max. It's fine. The aircraft itself was fine. Get to the seat. I could barely get my knee like straightened out. Oh, geez. It was tight. I have not flown on that for a while.
Wow. Sounds like a Scoot I was on in 2019.
Most likely, yes. This falls into that category. Seats do not recline. Yeah. But it is what it is. It's going to be, and the captain came on and said 55-minute flight. I'm like, even better. Okay. Boom. Everyone on. Away we go. All the rest of it is fairly straightforward. You can't even get a glass of water. Nothing. Everything is pay. So I literally just sat there. I brought my own snacks, good to go, and then arrive, and so be it. And on the return, it was a bit different. Checked in online. This time I got my digital boarding pass.
Okay.
Got to go straight to the gate, but they were dealing with all the care and stuff as people were scanning and boarding, which created a heck of a bottleneck. Because now people are getting mad, and then they're going to have to try and charge them, and then they're going to try and tag the bags. I was like, what inconsistency is this? Get on the plane, go to my seat, pick the same one, the 21D seat, and there's a person in the seat. Right, okay. I'm like, hi, I'm in the seat. She's like, so am I. And there we are staring at both our phones with the exact same. I'm like, okay. So they've boarded us with the same seat number. That's in my check-in mind. I'm like, that's not possible. Like either she would have had to like the red X, or I would have had the red X, but no.
Yeah.
So go to the back, hang out with the flight attendant. Like, yeah, okay. Seat two other people walk in, same thing. Now there's like 4 of us standing in the back galley, all with duplicated seats.
Oh, geez.
The flight attendant wasn't necessarily fussed. She's like, don't worry, nobody pays money for the front seats. I'm like, okay, I get you. So I did a little trick. I'm like, I'm going to be the last person that they're going to deal with, because they're going to fill as they move up. And sure enough, the lead flight attendant came back and basically brought us out like an army. And as she was advancing up the cabin, she said, okay, you sit here, you sit here, you sit here. I was the last person.
So it's like, yeah, we've seen this before. We know what to do.
Yeah, that's all.
And we see this every day pretty much.
Yeah. And next thing you know, I was sitting in one Delta, full bulkhead seat. Like, okay. Like, yeah, I was first off the plane on the other end, and that was the end of it. And it was just bizarre. Same thing. Nobody bought, ate, did anything, just sat there. I'm watching the crew and thinking, wow, this is boring. Two of them are reading books and they're just hanging out. So yeah, it was interesting. But to tie in, we're talking about turbulence. Anyone that flies from Vancouver or anywhere in British Columbia across the Rocky Mountains into Alberta, primarily into Calgary, where the Rockies are right there, you're always in for a turbulent ride as you buffet across the mountains. It's just natural. Yeah, used to it, but you could hear the odd scream and whatnot in the back, and it's fine.
And it
It's
was yeah,
expected.
last Christmas, I think, when I flew back east from Calgary and we caught a winter storm over southern Saskatchewan. And it's the only time I've ever felt my plane feel like it was like an off-road, like a rally car, just like
Hmm.
almost like slip turning or drift steering back and forth. Like it was just like
Yeah,
it was wild. It wasn't up and down turbulence. It was like weird side turbulence, and it wasn't like crosswinds, but it was like crosswinds coming one way, but it's just like we're going back and forth, and it was like, what the heck? And I'm just like, whatever, let's enjoy this ride.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that sort of stuff. The pilots tend to generally have some sort of indication that it's coming, whether it
Yeah.
be from planned weather tracking and their knowledge or reports through radio from flights ahead.
Yeah, it was like a friend flying from Toronto to San Diego last month, and there was a big storm cell right across the middle of the US. So they literally flew all the way pretty much west from Toronto to Minnesota on the northern shore of Lake Superior, then up and around and down to San Diego to miss all the thunderstorms and heavy weather. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's there. It's always going to be there.
exactly.
Right. And people, they'd say, "Oh, are the wings going to break off?" I'm like, I
Yeah.
wish I could like just show them the wing flex test when aircraft are developed and be like, "You think the wing's going to fall off? Take a look at this."
Yeah.
And if you haven't seen a wing flex test, just go YouTube any of the major aircraft manufacturers, and you'll see how much those wings can tolerate. It's incredible, an incredible feat of engineering. So yeah, that was a quick little thing about Flair. But other than that, it's there, and I think we've touched about the time when I was caught in the wake turbulence of a 747, was thrown in the
Hmm.
cabin a bit. It's planned versus unplanned. Planned is you come into Cancun and sort of these hot destinations of like the big thermals. It's kind of like a jolly roller coaster ride where the plane kind of does this nice sort of soft sink and kind of just sort of you feel your stomach kind of go boom.
Yeah, like you watch Hawks and whatever, and you're like, wow, you're up and down, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of like a controlled one, and then it kind of
Yeah,
goes up, and and they use that as part of the plan. They're like, okay, we're going to have a natural
descent. Yeah.
descent in a way, and yeah, certain cities, it's that last bit of landing. You come in, and I think
What like Phoenix and any hot and
Phoenix,
high, pretty much.
Vegas, and yeah, yeah,
Denver,
yeah, and
Johannesburg.
Vegas. So it's good times. And
Yeah.
there's one destination in your upcoming plan, which we can talk about in a second. So, right, moving on to summer 2024, we have a bit of travel going on. So, let's start with you have a long list. So let's start with you. Where
Oh,
are you going?
sure.
What are you doing?
I'm going around the world,
Awesome.
quite literally. So in when you were at the Tokyo Olympics and you messaged me and said, "Hey, like, what's this United 737 doing at was it Haneda?" And
Narita.
I'm like, Anurita. I was like, well, wait, I think it's this one. And then I pulled up the Island Hopper, which actually goes through all the islands of Marshall Islands and Micronesia. And I thought, well, that would be interesting to do at one point in my life. And well, this year I
This is the
decided,
point.
well, let's do it. And so then I had booked through, and that was the premise of the trip. And then other stuff just sort of happened along the way as Av Greekery kicked in. So I go from Toronto Pearson Terminal 1 to O'Hare in Chicago Terminal 1, United A320.
Okay.
Got a couple hours layover, so I forced a little bit longer than the 50 minutes that United wanted to give me because I'm like, look, it's
Yeah, that's
Chicago.
not
I don't
going to
want to be
happen.
like running.
Yeah.
So I've got about an hour and a half layover, assuming everything's all good. Then I get a 787 10 from O'Hare Terminal 1 to Honolulu Terminal 2. So this is going to be a 9-ish hour flight. I played for the Premium Plus with United. And so that's landing in Honolulu. I specifically when I was booking, looked around to try to force a decent layover because a bunch of things were landing in Honolulu at 6 or 7 in the evening. And because the following morning, my layover ends, and it leaves at 7:25.
Awesome. Honolulu is, well, it's Hawaii. Of course, you're going to get a long layover in Hawaii. Why wouldn't you? Honolulu Airport is really cool. It's so old school, and you're going to see it, the architecture and the open air walkways. I'll just leave it at that. And I flew in there quite a bit as crew, did a lot of layovers. And speaking of turbulence, Hawaii gets these island crosswinds. I think Maui more so. But depending which direction you come into Honolulu, it's there. At least Honolulu Airport's a little bit more away from the island mountains. But that's awesome. So, okay, into Honolulu.
Yeah, so I mean, United was offering me like layovers of 8 hours or whatever, landing in Honolulu and leaving the next morning at 7. I'm like, come on, I gotta force a long layover. So there was long looks to actually get the flight from Chicago as opposed to say from Denver or LA, which didn't give me a decent layover. And in any case, I've got a backup in case things go a little sideways. So then I overnight in Honolulu, and then the following morning at 7:25 in the morning, I fly to Majuro in the Republic of the Marshall Islands.
Are you overnighting in Waikiki?
No, I'm overnighting as close to the airport as I can.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, literally not too far from one end of the runway, and it was cheap. And I'm like, I don't want to have to worry about going any distance of travel at 5 in the morning. I want to get some sleep and stuff. So
there's the depending on the approach and depending what side of the plane you're in, if you happen to nail it, you get an absolutely stunning view of all of Waikiki as you're coming in. Yeah, and for those people that are on the beach that are into aviation, you just see planes coming in all day if you get just the right approach.
And who knows if I'm going to be landing on the runway out in the water or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, then you won't see any beach. But yeah, that's exactly cool. So then you're off to Majuro?
To Majuro in Marshall Islands. So I leave at 7:25 a.m. and I arrive at 10:40 a.m. the next day. And it's a 5-hour flight. Exactly.
Okay.
And that's a 737-800 United, formerly Continental Micronesia. So it's one that does all the flights. You can fly directly from Honolulu to Guam, or you can do this, whatever it is, 3 times a week flight between Honolulu and Guam that stops at all the little islands and is essentially their connection to the outside world that isn't a boat.
That's right, exactly. So what on earth is in Majuro? This is going into the nether reaches
atoll
of the world.
in the Pacific, and I mean, Marshall Islands are famous. One of the other islands is the famous Bikini Atoll, where the U.S. had the nuclear bomb tests in the 1950s or 40s and 50s. So that's that part of the world. And literally, I mean, somebody said, well, what is Marshall Islands? It's kind of like, well, halfway between, Philippines and Hawaii. And they said the attitude-wise, kind of, you mix Hawaii and Indonesia in a bowl, you'll wind up with sort of the attitude in the Marshall Islands. So Pacific Islander. Interesting that it's Europeans and Americans, no visas, but Canadian visa on arrival. So I'll make sure I have my greenbacks ready to pay for it. And I'll get an interesting thing in my passport, which will be fun. I'll spend
how long is that layover?
So I'm staying, let's see, well, because I lose the day. So I'm staying 3 nights, and then essentially sort of the next scheduled one that is coming, I catch that out. And so then this is flying the same flight, but continuing on to Guam, and it stops in Buchholz Army Airfield is the first stop. So that's a U.S. installation. So no civilians allowed in the terminal and no pictures on that particular landing or approach. Then it stops in Pohnpei, which is in Micronesia. And each of these are stopping for about an hour on the ground. And then it stops in Chuuk, used to be known as Truk in Micronesia, and then eventually ends up in Guam.
This is going to be really interesting to see what sort of aircraft will be positioned at all these little. Well, some of them are
Yeah, well, I'm
military, some of
guessing a
them are
bunch
not.
of yeah,
Who knows?
Pipers and Cessnas and
Yeah,
who knows, Dorniers or whatever.
yeah. This is wild, and even just the architecture of these airports is going to be quite fascinating to see.
Well, I'm gonna guess it's pretty much walk out in the open as much as you can.
Hmm. Yeah.
Then a few days in Guam.
So what on earth is in
So
Guam? That's like kind
well,
of
it
like one of those
was
things you hear and all immediately you think military.
well, it's the furthest west U.S. territory or furthest east U.S. territory, I guess you would say.
Right.
And so after the Second World War, it was essentially closed for 7 or 8 years as an official U.S. military installation, then opened up, and then does have congressional representatives that are elected, does take part in the U.S. Electoral situation as well. So it is a U.S. territory by
But
all
is
extents.
it
The
still
U.S.
a base, like an army
There's a
base?
base there,
It
a
is.
rather
Okay.
major base. Nice beaches and tourism. So a lot of people from Korea and from Japan use that as a sort of a tropical location. I know from Japan there are the 380s that fly directly to Honolulu. I guess this is sort of like the quicker one if you wanted to go that way.
Right. Okay. Huh. I never have thought. I don't know why. For some reason, like this route you just kind of makes me think of Tom Hanks and Castaway. Not to
Well, hopefully
foreshadow
not.
anything, right? Yeah, exactly. This is kind of
If
like,
I start talking to volleyballs or something, then we'll know what's going on.
yeah, we'll send
Um,
word that way.
and then I was looking around, and so flights from Guam to Japan, I decided to fly to Fukuoka, Japan, just because the airport code is FUK.
Nice.
And so I'm flying, and so there were flights, not indirect flights via Seoul that were leaving at like 10 to 4 in the morning. And I was like, enough of that. I have enough points. So I got a relatively, spent a minimal amount of points and a minimal amount of money to fly at a reasonable just before 7 a.m. flight to Japan. Uh, Again, a 737-800, and then I'll stay the night in Fukuoka at a traditional, Japanese ryokan, so Japanese inn.
Just back on that United, does that plane do the same thing in the opposite direction? Like
Yeah,
Guam via places back to Honolulu?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's one way or the other, and I mean, one of the reasons why there's the stops in Japan, and it also does like a leg to Manila.
I'm just wondering how many 737-800s they have positioned there. If it's like just one, is it two or is it a few?
I'm not sure how many there are, but I know they like this particular one. They have a mechanic that they take on the flight with them. They have extra material with them just in case there's mechanical issues. So that's
Yeah, that makes me think there's only like maybe one, max two. You'll have to pay attention
yeah,
to the registrations and see if you end up ending
exactly.
up on
Yeah,
the
I'll
exact
see what's
same
going
one.
on and yeah, where's going what. But and then Japan obviously fly up there because it's parts are cheaper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So then through Japan by train up to Osaka, and then I decided, based on stories from Paul and others about Japanese domestic and how incredible the Japanese are at boarding and uh, getting off the airplane, alighting the plane, I decided I'll take an internal flight. And as opposed to going from Osaka at Keik's on Kansai Island, I decided to go from Itami, the older airport that I'm doing that from Itami to Tokyo. I'm doing it in a 787-800 and Tokyo Haneda. So it's an hour-ish flight,
Is this
hour
Japan
15
Airlines
minutes.
or ANA?
This is ANA.
Right.
And I mean, they have an interesting pricing scheme where it's very blunt, it's like 75-day out discount. And, the prices are showing very straightforward. Here's how we're pricing. Here's this particular, you're this many days out, you qualify for this sort of reduction in price. So I thought
Yeah.
it was quite interesting how booking them.
Haneda is near and dear to my heart because during the Tokyo 2020 games, which took place in 2021, I think I may have mentioned this on a previous episode, but my assigned accommodation was it the Tokyo Haneda XL Hotel?
In
We have
Terminal 2?
Terminal 2, yes. And my room looked out at active ramp. So for 33 days, I got to look at the ramp
Watch
in
the ramp.
front.
Yeah.
That was great. I mean, all the action, everything was there, including that runway, the same runway that had that unfortunate crash a few
Oh,
months ago.
wow.
Yeah, that same runway is there. I don't know the directions right now off the top of my head,
Yeah.
but you'll have to pay attention again, depending on the approach and which side of the plane, and maybe look at that grass.
Actually, honestly, I mean, there's a website, is on JAL's site, not ANA's, but it's, which side is Fuji on? So you can actually, it asks you,
Hmm.
you're leaving from which city to which city, and which side of the airplane should you be sitting on?
Yeah.
And so, assuming things are good, I have a window seat that should be able to see Fuji.
Yeah. And that's also something great. When I did the Beijing Olympics, they routed me through Tokyo, through Haneda. And the last leg was Haneda to Beijing. I was on the left side of the plane, and it was like direct view of Fuji the whole time we were kind of in that
Oh,
vicinity.
wow.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
really awesome. Yeah. So
Nice.
hopefully that comes through.
Yeah. And then, yeah, so for me, a few days in Tokyo, and then I once I booked my itinerary, I was like, well, got to Japan. I'm like, well, now what? And so I thought, well, I've got friends with birthdays in July in Europe, so I decided let's just keep going. So I was looking around multiple destinations, multiple routes, a number of hours on Google Flights and ITA Flight Matrix, and eventually found a flight from Tokyo to Copenhagen via Singapore.
Okay. That's not direct, but continue.
True, yes. So it's Tokyo Haneda Terminal 3 to Singapore Terminal 3, 777-300ER, and
On
I
which airline?
forced Singapore.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And so I forced a long layover as opposed to the one that they wanted to give me. So I forced about a 9 hour layover in Singapore. So I'm then going to go into town, prospectively meet people, or just go enjoy the food. And then I'll go back to the airport.
You have to make sure you spend time at the Jewel.
Yes, again.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the
Yeah,
crowning
the first
thing, right?
time you saw, yeah, I saw it. It was just like, my goodness,
Yeah,
they put this in an airport. It's like, Changi's like a terminal attached to a mall.
exactly. You could spend your entire layover just at the Jewel,
Yes,
if you wanted to. But yeah,
but yeah, I'm gonna go to the hawker stands or whatever and enjoy some food as well. And then from Singapore Terminal 3 to Copenhagen Terminal 3, 13-hour flight in a Airbus 350-900. So this is my first 350 experience. I've got the bulkhead in premium economy, and I have access to book the cook, which I used.
oh, very good. Yeah. Oh, they did that in premium economy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so then fly to Copenhagen. Realize that there are no showers in Copenhagen. So what I'm planning to do is I'm going to check in my bag for the Norwegian flight to Stockholm, and then go catch the metro from Copenhagen Airport for 2 stops, and then walk 10 minutes to the beach
Nice.
and go for a swim.
Well, there you go.
We've got some nice a causeway out into the water where you can actually jump in like it's a pool. So that'll probably be what I
Brilliant.
do to wake up. Meeting a mutual friend just north of Stockholm in Uppsala, spending a night there, some trains across Sweden, and eventually ending up in Oslo in Norway, and flying back from Oslo to Frankfurt, A320, classic, just Lufthansa, straightforward inter-European flight. And so that's then using their rail and fly option to land at Frankfurt and continue on in Germany by train. Then working my way around Europe mostly by train, I think, maybe a flight that I still have to figure out. But then my last leg back to Canada, I had some points that I decided to use, and they offered um, Frankfurt to JFK with Singapore on a 777-300ER. And then from JFK, well, that lands at Terminal 4. I might go back to the TWA terminal when I land, just to the TWA hotel, just to pass the time for a couple hours, because then a little bit later, JFK Terminal 7 to back to Pearson with an Embraer 175.
And that's with who?
Air Canada.
Right. Got it. Frankfurt JFK on Singapore. So this is the Fifth Freedom, one of these sorts of things. I wonder, what's the original routing on that flight then? Is it Singapore?
Yeah, well, it's Singapore, Frankfurt, JFK. I mean, you can go JFK.
Oh, it's the long way around versus the ultra long.
Yeah, so you can do the Pacific way, you can do the Atlantic the Atlantic and Asia way.
Yeah. Okay. So you got a bit of Singapore Airlines 777-300s coming up, which is, the same aircraft that suffered. It has nothing to do with the aircraft, really.
Exactly.
It's just fate and time.
But, great respect for the seatbelt sign. It's like, yeah, it's off, but keep buckled up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people, I think when, and we mentioned this, Paul and I talked about this, it doesn't matter what airline. You hear about these events and then immediately, well, which airline? Is it an unsafe airline? Well, the turbulence doesn't pick based on that. And Singapore Airlines, one of the best airlines in the world, can happen to them too. And it did happen to them.
You've got pilots with, how many thousands of flight hours. I mean, it's not like they've never seen turbulence before.
No, exactly. And I'm sure that, their reactive measures immediately post of it all taking place were correct and true and, as per procedure. So yeah, it's terrible to hear, with a fatality and all this kind of stuff, but can't stress enough that seatbelt sign, of course, if it's on, just make sure it's on you.
Yeah. And even when you're sitting at your seat, I mean,
just even lose just something to kind of keep things a bit. You're right. If you're in the aisle waiting to go to the lav, well, you can't be pinned to the seat the whole time, but it's there. So just be.
Yeah. And if you're in the lav, hold on.
At least when you're in the lav, you're contained. I don't know if that's a good thing.
Yeah, and so. You've got probably an ability to put your arms out and.
Well, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. But I mean, the crew, when they're out with service and carts, those carts become missiles, right? When you're talking the forces.
Along with everything on them.
Yeah.
If you're liking this episode experience, you may also enjoy Experience 74. Summer Skies. 2023 plans for Vinod and Jeff. It's available wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Well, that's pretty incredible. That's quite the run, and lots of
so
stories
I will do my
out.
best to be putting videos on the Instagram and cross-posting to YouTube, and then also just hopefully we have a chance to have a meetup while we're internationally, while we're both in various places around the world.
Well, you're going to be in Europe at the same time.
We've done it before.
So I'm going to be going across, nothing wild routing, but to work the Olympic Games, departing in July. So very simple, Air France direct, Vancouver to Charles de Gaulle, premium economy on that one, and should be pretty straightforward.
777?
They currently are running a 777-300 out of here. Later on they're going to be switching it to an A350. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being back on Air France. I've had great flights with them in the past, especially in premium economy. Charles de Gaulle and all things Olympics in Paris is going to be full on already. We're still over a month away from the games, and the traffic is just insane. In fact, our instructions, typically when I go, in the role that I'm in, there will be a dedicated driver there standing with a sign, pick up car. No, I need to
take the RER.
Take the RER, and then, once I reach, I guess, Gare du Nord, figure out how I'm going to go from there. Taxi, Uber, and all stuff. In my mind, I'm like, the luggage. So we'll see where this goes. I might just cave and immediately on arrival saying, forget it. Just take the Uber right from the airport. So
yeah,
so yeah, it'll be good. So I'll be there in Paris for the summer. So we should look at crossing paths, actually. I'm thinking about you
Yeah, I
being in
mean, there was a time
Frankfurt.
that I was in Kuala Lumpur and you were in Istanbul, and we connected
Yeah,
for an
yeah,
episode way back in 2019.
yeah. And then later, my wife and son are going to fly across to do some travels then. So let's see. They're kind
Are
of
they
come.
flying with Air France as well?
They are coming on the Air France flight, and the whole reason for this is that at the end of it, we're all matched up together.
Ah,
Yeah, that's the whole thing. So it'll be the first time for my wife to fly on her own with my 3-year-old. So we'll see how that goes. And
what
then
a
what we're
red eye.
doing on a radar, yeah. But he's done a few already, so I think we're gonna be okay.
Nice. Yeah.
So into Paris, and then right away the next day we are out to Porto, Portugal, and we're gonna be on TAP Air Portugal. Very simple air Embraer flight.
320?
No, Embraer 190 straight across, and then we're gonna be going out of Orly on that one. And I haven't
Okay.
flown to Orly for years, so I'm quite looking forward to that. Again, this is all economy class. When you're traveling with the family, unless you're made of gold, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Right. Into Porto, we're gonna spend 9 days working our way down the country by
Nice.
road and train and whatnot. And then we pick up in Faro and fly on
Very far
Ryanair.
south. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent.
I know I was a bit
Speaking of
apprehensive.
lining up.
Yeah, I was apprehensive, but when I bought the ticket, I was like, the only way that one can survive these sorts of things and have some sanity is you end up paying for all their so-called perks to kind of bring the experience to sort of a mainline level. So that's what I did. I added the bags, I added the seats, I added the boarding, and it still ended up being cheaper. And based on the timing, what we needed, it worked out fine. Ryanair up to Dublin, of all places.
All
So
right.
it's a bit of a wacky routing, but we have a family we're going to visit up there. So Ryanair up to Dublin. Hope all goes well. It's a solo flight of the day. It's a head start flight. The plane should be there. So fingers crossed on that. Dublin by road, visiting family and people and friends and stuff. And then back into Dublin 4 days later. And then we're going to go Dublin to Charles de Gaulle on Aer Lingus, which I haven't flown them also for a year. So it's kind of nice, this trip, kind of reconnecting back with some airlines that I haven't been on. Same thing, straightforward A320, pretty, yeah. Who knows? Maybe it'll be.
Hour and
Yeah,
20
I think it's
minutes.
just shy of 2 actually on that. Maybe
Okay.
I can't remember actually, but it'll be something like that. It's funny when buying that one, they position themselves as if they're trying to sell you ULCC, but the category jumps and the perks are very small. So or they package it up. So you're either like going really ULCC style, or the next category is you're basically in a mainline carrier, which is what we did. The
Yep.
bags, the seats, and everything. And then Charles de Gaulle for 4 days, and then Air France back to Vancouver YVR all together, and that sums up that whole trip. So yeah, a lot of movement going on this summer.
All right.
So yeah, I think that wraps it up. We got a lot ahead of us, and looking forward to bringing it all together. And maybe we can catch a recording cross ocean, cross continent, somewhere along the line, and maybe towards the end of the summer we'll be able to do a lot of trip reporting, which will be great.
If you liked this podcast experience, be sure to rate us and subscribe. Tell your friends and fellow travelers about us. Make sure you visit us at podcast.seat1a.org for complete show notes. That's Sierra Echo Alpha Tango, the number 1 alpha.org. Feedback, addenda, letting us know where we've messed up. You can send all of that to stories, STORIES, at seat1a.org. If you'd like to support the show financially, we have a page at Patreon, patreon.com/seat1a. Links are included in the show notes. And I know for Turbulence, I mean, in Canada, sometimes I go to the NavCan weather site and I actually look at, upper levels and cloud forecasts. I'm like, all right, well, this one's going to be, especially in the winter, this one's going to be like a rough flight or whatever. So I don't know of the other equivalents in other countries. I mean, I've got some time here in the next 11 days to check it out. Maybe I'll search out just weather planning and pretending I'm doing flight planning myself.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of it, that's a great segue into what are we going to be talking about as we kind of look forward. I have a friend of mine that used to be a dispatcher with
Oh,
one of the
nice.
major airlines in Canada. He's not anymore because, when obviously all things of the pandemic hit, he had to move along in order to keep the roof over his head. But he's totally into aviation, and we'll be getting him on as an interview at some point in the next few months. So, as always, we look forward to your stories. If you have anything you want us to talk about, or especially if you have anything you want us to look for or pay attention to in all the destinations that we've just talked about, which is literally, you know, half the world, please do let us know. Do get in touch on socials or through email, and we'd be happy to check it out for you.
Absolutely. Now we just need to do the other half south of the equator.
Exactly. We'll get there.
Excellent. So until the next time, I'm Jeff. Thanks for listening.
And I'm Vinod. You're cleared for takeoff. Have a great flight.